Okay, as people start trickling in, hello everyone. Happy Wednesday. Happy New Year. Happy. I slipped. Hi, I'm Connor Cook. I am a board member at the Alliance for Women Film Composers, and I'm also a composer. And today I'm very pleased to be speaking about women in game sound. So I'm gonna start by, oh yeah, and I forgot to say, this is an inside session, which is a feature of the Alliance for Women Film Composers. These are monthly educational Zoom sessions about all kinds of stuff. I don't think we've repeated a topic yet, which is pretty thrilling that there's that much to dig into. So as I said, today we're going to be talking about game audio, and I'm going to start by calling on each of my wonderful participants to introduce themselves, starting with Becca.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm Becca Schack. I'm a composer and electronic artist based here in LA, originally from New York, working in film. I also write songs for TV shows and commercials, and also more recently, video games. My work blends electronic sounds. I use my vocals a lot, and also orchestral textures to create an immersive space and soundtrack.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Let's go to Yoko next.
Hi everyone, I'm Yoko, originally from Japan. I lived in England for quite a while too, so forgive my weird accent, that's where it came from, but it's much better now. And I'm a game music composer, music director. I've done a lot of film and TV before I started working for video games, so I still work for film and TV. And sometimes I do arrangement work, orchestration, but primarily video game, music, and audio these days. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Kelli, let's go to you next.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kelli Wakili. I am from Washington, D.C., the Washington, D.C. area, but I am based in LA now, and I'm a singer, songwriter, producer. I mainly work in TV and film, doing, all types of music, all types of genres for all types of different shows and movies and ads, and more recently in the gaming industry, which is really fun and cool. So yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for being here and donating your time and expertise to our insight sessions. So let's see. I have a bunch of questions. I'm kind of curious. I usually start with this question, and y'all are welcome to respond as much or as little to this one, but I'm curious. I'm always curious what people's specific music background is, like not necessarily like education specifically, but like what about music made you want to make a career of it? And sort of how did you get from beginning music to where you are now? And y'all can jump in on this one. We don't have to do the same order if someone has thoughts to jump right in.
Okay, I can start this question. So, my background, I was originally classical concert pianist for quite a while, and I went to performing arts school in England. So, I didn't even intend to be creator, composer, arranger until much later on. And long story short, one day I got interested in making music or, doing the sound design for film, TV. And that's what brought me to the United States. And I ended up being here in LA, Los Angeles. And I am a performer and I don't really do like risottos or concert these days, but that helped me to do a lot of like programming on the keyboard in my computer. So all the dots connected in line. I've studied sound design and music technology back in England. So everything what I've studied helped me to craft my, programmed music to produce music for game or film and TV. So that's my background. It's not like, I've always focused on creating music for a video game necessarily, but everything I've learned is helping me to create what I'm doing right now, even the performance aspect. So that's my background. I'm also a gamer. I've played a lot of games growing up, and I'm from Japan, so there are lots of video games in the titles. So that's what made me, one reason why I'm so interested in creating music for video game because I love games.
Love that. I too love games. That's one of my questions coming up. So you could all get excited for that one. And also, I'm going to open that one up for the chat because I want to hear what everyone's favorite video game is. That's hard though, I know, because there's so many great ones, but that'll be for later. I'll save that for later because we're only in the first quarter. So anyone else want to weigh in on that question about musical background, not necessarily education, but certainly if you want to go that way, or even just like random life experiences that maybe made you want to pursue music? I'm always curious about that.
Kelli, do you want to jump in here?
Yes, so I guess I'll go. For me, I was really always into music. When I was a kid, I was literally that child that was always in the corner singing something or writing something. Just kind of just my way to, exist in the world. And stumbling into this aspect of the industry, like not necessarily, being on which I have done. I've been on the stage and I've done the whole thing, but like to be able to create music for different games and shows and all of that, I kind of just stumbled into it, but it's been like the greatest blessing because I've been able to really tap into all of the different creative aspects of myself. I get to write from so many different perspectives and just like kind of set the tone for, different moments, for people and for shows. So, and games. So that's kind of my background. I've just kind of always been doing it. And luckily I get to make a career out of it. So, yeah.
Cool. Love it. Becca, you want to weigh in on this one?
Sure. Yeah, I've always been very immersed in music my whole life. I started out playing piano and singing and songwriting as a kid, and then I ended up studying all different types of music and playing jazz in high school and singing in the choir, and then I ended up studying composition at a conservatory in New York City. I grew up upstate, and yeah, I got really into just writing concert music. And then once I graduated from there, I sort of got a little disillusioned by the academia world for some reason. And I hadn't really done so much songwriting while I was in conservatory. So then I started playing in bands and touring and started my own project, and then released a lot of records, and that's sort of was my way in. And then I guess once I moved to LA, I've been here for 11 years now. I slowly started pivoting into more production music and then scoring work, which kind of brought me full circle. So I had always known I wanted to get into music for media. And yeah, I've also stumbled across my love of video games more in my like the past few years, and it's become my new obsession. And so it's something I'm really excited about doing more of.
Cool. I love that. We have a couple audience questions, and I'm really glad y'all are here because I went to GDC, maybe it was like 2 years ago, and I did a little AWFC event there. And I will say, not many women and non-binary folks did I encounter there. And that was concerning because it wasn't that long ago. And I'm trying to go back again at some point, even though I don't really work in video games, but I dig representation. So I'll go anywhere. Okay. So we have this great audience question. How did you get your first jobs in video games? And did you all work on the same game recently? Is that how you all know each other?
Yep.
Cool.
So I'm kind of culprit about that question. So Becca and I have been friends, and our mutual friend introduced me to Becca, but that was like right before or right around the pandemic. So it took me about 3 years, maybe a little longer, to ask Becca like, hey, would you like to jump on this project with me? So I was also waiting for the right project, and the right one just came, and that's the game that was released 2025 last year in May called Capcom Fighting Collection 2. So that's a compilation of the game, and Kelli performed amazing vocal on that. And she was on the track, the main theme actually of the game. So that's how we're all connected. Kelli, actually, her husband Mansa, they too did the amazing vocal work on the main theme. So that's how we are all connected on here.
Cool. That's so cool. It seems like video games, I actually have worked on a few video games, and they're very collaborative in my experience where, yes, I was the composer. I didn't do sound design. I was a composer on a few games, and I found myself not only doing composing. Oh, that's my cat's feeder. I found myself like sometimes being brought into like spitball stuff with the rest of the team, which I thought was really cool and pretty different from film and TV, where with film and TV, you usually come on and it's like you have your kind of job laid out for you where maybe there's temp and you're mimicking the temp, or maybe you're allowed to experiment or whatever, but you're kind of doing a linear thing. I found with game music, it was cool to be doing all the different assets, but also they'd be like, sometimes there'd be a question like, what do you think? Do you think this character should have a yellow shirt? And I'd be like, well, I don't know. I'm not usually asked this type of opinion type question. And I thought that was pretty cool and maybe unique to games. I don't know if you all have had the same experience, but I did kind of dig that because it felt more team oriented. Whereas for me, film scoring, which is what I mostly do, is a little more isolated, a little more like yourself, a little more yourself by yourself. So anyway, that's my tangent. And if y'all have other how you got your first video game job stories, we would love to hear them.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I actually got my first indie game from a cold pitch I did on a Facebook group post. It was a lead composer who was working on an indie game called Legends of Venari, and it's a fantasy RPG. And they basically needed help with the main theme for the menu screen. And so I think, yeah, a bunch of people pitched for it and they ended up hiring me, which was kind of my lucky moment. And so, yeah, that was an interesting process. They basically just sent me kind of because it was an in-game track, they just sent me kind of some visuals and references and things like that, like you would do for like a song pitch kind of thing. And it was instrumental synthwave. So definitely my wheelhouse. And yeah, that was really cool. And then I guess my second, my last video game credit was through Yoko with the Capcom game, and that was felt very exciting and like a dream come true. And similarly, we went back and forth and talked about references and what kind of style they wanted the music, and then I worked pretty closely with Yoko on creating that.
Cool.
Yeah.
For me, my company, Wink Village is the name of my company, the music company that my husband and I own. What am I saying? Yeah, okay. So we put music in ads for games, like League of Legends, and yeah, and that was basically through just pitching a song, and it kind of like with the sync world, getting a song in a commercial. But for this one with Yoko, I was pitched as a vocalist and I was chosen, and so was my husband, which was so odd because they didn't know that we had any type of connection. It was just two different voices that were pitched.
Oh, that's so amazing.
Yeah, we both were chosen, and we were given the direction, and it was really cool being able to write something specifically for something, you know what I mean? Like with the other placements that I've had in the gaming world, or that we've had in the gaming world, it was pre-existing songs, you know what I mean? And just seeing if it fit in the ad. But for this one, we were able to specifically write for this game, with direct references and, kind of create that whole moment for the theme, which was really, really cool. And Yoko was so awesome and thorough and just wonderful. So it was a really great first experience in that aspect of it.
Cool. That does kind of feed into our next audience question, which is what's the difference between composing for a film and for video games? Is the process different? Well, yes, short answer, I will say. I teach music composition for the screen at CSUN, and I will say video game music is totally different because it functions completely differently than film or TV music. Film or TV music is super linear and it's usually guiding the story. Game music can do and game sound can do any number of different things. And so I think it's like pretty I think it actually uses like a different part of my brain. But I would love to hear from the panelists what y'all think on that. Since all of you do various types of media composing.
Right. So I'm going to jump in there. So I highly agree with what you said, linear versus game. I always say film and TV, it's linear, like 2D, and video game music is more like 3D. And like you said earlier, it's a lot of collaboration, collaborative work. And Becca and I worked on the same piece of music where Becca did an amazing arrangement, and I jumped on the part of that song. I did traditional Japanese instruments on the game music, and I don't really have that kind of experience on film and TV music. And also, for example, like fighting game, compared to like, RPG game. It's a lot of like, it's like as a imagine Lego, right? You're gonna put the pieces together. Oh, but it can be shaped like this, shaped that like there's no like right answer as to like, like which music versus film music. It's like linear from like left to right kind of thing. And it's often just connected with like what's going on the motion picture, like okay, so this is the story, this is the character, this is kind of like the vibe, what's going on the screen. Versus game, it's up to the player, so it can be gloomy, it can be like happy, if the player goes back to say like the town, like it can be a happy tone. So when I build the game music, it's so different. So I have a bunch of like say motifs, like the short riffs, whatever you want to call. And then I have to imagine, so, okay, if it's going to be like the maximum tension, if I build everything, then there can be like pre-boss battle, like epic kind of like in build up. But if I'm going to strip it down to use just like few main motifs, then it can be just a happy music, walking around the town. So a lot of like your Lego mindset, in my head, or, I sometimes, fit around my keyboard. Does it work together? Does it work together? How many layers, do I need for this moment? Is it too much? Is it too powerful? Too little? So that kind of thinking process alone is like 2D versus 3D is oftentimes what I say. Last year, I got lucky to be invited for this conference, which thanks to Becca. And I talked about the same thing, 2D versus 3D. That's the easiest to analyze how this, game music versus film and TV. Of course, there are a lot of like difference, but yeah, we do have a lot of collaborations compared to film and TV as well. So that alone is amazing. When I do music director gig, I get to work with like an amazing, like, like artists, performers, and composers, and arrangers too. And then on top of that, sometimes I have like orchestrator. So everyone chipped in their like musicality, their specialty. So that's exciting. I prefer to work with a lot of like different kind of, world people, or like even different genre. And that kind of chemistry, sometimes brings out the results that I never ever expected, right? So I enjoyed it now that I am, like at a certain age, and, after working on so many film and TV, which is quite the different corner, like you said earlier, I'm more enjoying like the collaborative process. I have this like a mental capacity. Oh, cool. What are you going to bring to the table? Versus when I was much younger, I'm like, I have to do everything by myself, for film and TV, which was like intense. And I feel like mentally it's a lot healthier, like to collaborate with other, for me at least. So that's quite a difference. I still have to do a lot of work by myself when I'm on and say like film project. So that's like really different, like process-wise for me.
Totally.
Yeah, just to hop onto that same idea, yeah, I really enjoy collaborating. Like when we were working on the Capcom project together, it was such a fun learning experience for me because, I got to write in the EDM style, and then with Yoko, learn how to write for traditional Japanese instruments and learn what sounds, what instruments to use. And so we would kind of like piggyback on each other, like, hey, like Yoko would tell me, let's try this kind of flute or this different type of, you know, like percussion element or something, and then I would go and like work on that part of it, and we'd kind of go back and forth. And so I really love that part of the process, and I learned so much from you, Yoko, so thank you for that experience. And for the other project I worked on, I guess for this too, like the music had to be able to loop, but you also want to make sure that it's not too obvious that it's looping. So you want to have it like, sound like you don't want the player to kind of their ear to pick up on that so easily. So it was fun to kind of find interesting ways to make the music interesting and build. So it kept it exciting and build momentum.
That's a great skill. Kelli, did you want to jump in on this one?
I feel like they said everything. For me, for me with, working on the Capcom project with Yoko, I'm just going to piggyback on what she said. It was very collaborative. In the sync world that I'm mainly in, or mostly in most of the time, I guess. It is very isolating. I just make songs and pitch them, and if it fits the project, then it fits, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. Like there are other times, I've done other projects where there's more of a direction, but to do a main theme for a game, gaming is huge, and you want to be able to like capitalize off of the momentum and like the excitement that the player has, so just collaborating with Yoko and the others, it that was really the difference for me, being able to work with others and not just by myself in my corner with my keyboard or computer or whatever, you know what I'm saying? It was more. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's cool about games. Yeah, it does seem unique to games, based on what I have discovered. So, gosh, I still have a ton of questions, so I'm going to just keep going. For people who are kind of entering more newly into the Zoom room, if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. I will get to them as they come up. And I'll also leave a bit of time at the end if anyone wants to jump in verbally and ask questions. So let's see. This is a question that I love asking all my panelists. Some of these are repeat questions, but each time the panel is different, so the answers are always different. So what are some surprising skills that are useful for working in video games? Maybe things you didn't expect to be helpful.
I could jump in with that. I feel like problem solving, like as a gamer, I guess you really have to like solve puzzles and problem solve and really analyze and also be very observant of your surroundings because you're always like looking for things or looking for new ways to figure out where you're going in the game. So I feel like that really applies to composing and making music and also doing game music because it just makes you very solution oriented because it's a very technical type of job and you're constantly having to figure new things out and learning new skills. And so I think that those things really pair well together. And it's something that I've gotten a lot better at actually since becoming a gamer.
Awesome. And makes sense. Anyone else?
Okay, I'm gonna go before anyone else is gonna say something I would say. So, unexpected things for me. Like I mentioned before, game music, to me, it's a lot of like puzzles and Lego block building kind of situation going on, like in a figurative speech. So another thing is I love cooking. I love eating. I love cooking. So the way I build like a block, it can be say same thing in cooking. So I've done a lot of like imaginations and in my head. So I build this together elements and I season this, I cook this way and in my work. But if I'm gonna strip it down, like is it too much? Like that process I explained earlier, everything goes the same, in the cooking world. So that actually kind of trained me like, unexpectedly throughout the years. So I still do this like when I'm stuck with the idea or when I'm like absolutely like, like no clue what's going on, what I want to do. Sometimes I go to kitchen and I start cooking and I'm like vaguely thinking about like, okay, so what can I do while I'm cooking something? That process sometimes kind of inspires me like, oh yeah, I just used these two ingredients and I can probably build the same way on this like main theme of this video game. That sounds a little off, but to me it kind of worked. And yeah, like you said, this is quite unexpected because I didn't really like learn or like I didn't enjoy cooking for building video game music. So that's one thing that always works for me.
Cool. I would have never thought of that. So thank you. Kelly, how about you? Any unexpected skill discoveries through working on video game music?
Unexpected skill discoveries. With my experience in the video gaming music industry, I just did the theme. I wrote the theme to a game. And I don't know, I guess being able to like tap in to the mind of a character, I think that I'm really, what's the word? What's the word that I'm looking for? When you can tap into like other people's feelings, you know what I'm saying?
Empathetic.
There it is. That's the word. I'm very empathetic. I'm an empathetic person. But doing that, working on the themes of the game, I was able to I had to tap into like what, the different characters and everything, you know what I'm saying? To really, I've said this like every time I've spoken, but to set the tone, it was a fighting game. So, you got to get into what is this, what are these characters going to be feeling, as people are getting ready to dive into this world, what are they going to feel? So yeah, that's the empathy, the feelings. I'm a feelings person. I really was able to tap into that. It's not really unexpected coming from me because I'm feelings based, but it took it to a new level, being able to do that like with a game.
Cool.
So, yeah.
I think that is a huge, I'm glad you brought that up. I think that's a huge skill for any media composer, empathy, because with scoring TV and film, that's pretty much the job, unless it's like you're kind of doing general thematic scoring. Most of the time you're playing to the emotions of the picture. So I think it is a skill. If you are someone who's empathetic and can kind of sense other people's emotions, it's so useful because you don't have to guess. You're kind of like, oh, if I were in this situation, this is how I would feel. And that is like pretty much the info you need. Thank y'all. Let's see, we have some more audience questions. So let's see here. We have this one. In video games, do you create short motifs or rhythmic patterns that can be looped and add layers or stems to these motifs or patterns? It would be amazing to know more about the practical and creative process. Some examples would be super interesting to hear from you. Yeah, so if y'all want to share your websites in the chat at the end, or even just tell people where they can hear your music, that would be great. But yeah, for this questions, I think this is kind of talking about the assets. So how there's video game loops, which we talked about a little bit, but we can definitely get more into, like 0-point looping, that kind of stuff. Video game layers, which is when you have, I think Yoko mentioned this, like an ambient layer, then a tension layer that plays with the ambient layer, and then like an intense layer that plays with all three. You don't really hear that layer by itself. They all kind of play together. That's why we were saying the thing about video game music being kind of not linear, but stacked. So yeah, maybe we can talk about some video game assets that we've all encountered when working on video games, like some things you might get if you land, let's say you land, okay, let me be really clear because I'm a yapper. Let's say we all landed a video game and we get the paper that's like, here's what we want from you. Some things I've seen on this type of project guideline would be stingers. So like little sounds to be like, hey, you win, or like you lose, those kind of things. Transitions are something I've had to do a lot of, which are like little palette cleansers between moments. Cutscenes, which is a lot more like film scoring. It's like a scene that happens that's giving you information about the game. And then layers, of course. So those are all loopable. So I would say if I had a thesis statement, learn how to make a clean, dope loop. Learn how to do it, because if you can't make a good tail that loops back around, everyone's going to hear that little click of like, oh, it's looping back around. So you want to learn how to make a really clean loop, and then you're going to be set for video games. What about you, panelists? What do you think?
Okay, I go first. So yes, everything what you said, Connor, is absolutely right. The only thing that's like film and TV is the cutscenes, which is like cinematic sequence. So it's like story basis. Not many cutscenes would loop unless there is a reason or meaning of the cutscene coming back later on something. So that's the only like, 2D kind of linear sequence type of the music. I don't have to focus on like looping or making the motifs or riffs like loopable. But when I make other like, stingers or like other elements, I usually try to think about the strong, but also catchy. Catchy also the key, because if it's just like the few core layers, I'll try to break it down like in an easy way for understanding. If it's catchy, that core layers can stand alone and can be looped. Even if it's like say like 3 layers, that would work. But if the tension is max, then say 12, different kind of stack of layers. Then if each layers are like also like, catchy and work together, then that's going to be really powerful. And it's still loopable, like 1 minute, 30 seconds. It depends on the sequence. So I try to create something that's catchy. So either the full-on stack of layers or just like, like straight down version, the core layers, standalone would work either way. And the catchy, almost like, catchy in a way that you can probably create a pop music, like, like with the vocalist and everything. So that's something I would also keep in mind, like, okay, so let's make it catchy. But if it's like ambient kind of like sequence, then I can create catchy. I have to think the other way, that I have to kind of, like make layers. It's subtle, but it works, standalone. But I can also stock like 15 layers to create more like a moody kind of vibe. So those are the things, technical aspects. So to answer the question from the audience, I do create short motifs or say layers or rhythm patterns that's loopable. It's based on the sequence or cues that I'm scoring, for the video game. Sometimes I start with the rhythmic patterns because it's easier, say like to create the tension, like sometimes it's better to create with the motifs. It depends on like what kind of cue or what kind of game, like you create different kind of music for different kind of film. It's the same thing. So there are no like set ways of creating video games, like, like motifs or like patterns. So that's something either you have to think about it, or you are talking to the video game developer or, your collaborators. And, like you also write it down because there's so many layers that you can't even keep track of. So I always try to make like the list or like the paths of those, like, like what I have to check, because there are literally so many parts and bits and I sometimes lose track of those. So that's something I would do to keep, like what I'm doing, keep track of what I'm doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. It seems like game assets are more, maybe disparate isn't the word, but like with film and TV, you get a cue sheet and it tells you exactly the timing, exactly the tone. It's usually temped. So the roadmap is there. It seems like with games, there's usually a sheet, like a one sheet that tells you what assets they want, but it's less specific. It's maybe more objectively creative, where it's like, we need 20 stingers. What are those stingers? Stingers can be like so many different things, because like I was saying earlier, it could be like winner stinger, loser stinger, death stinger, found an object stinger, encounter a person stinger. Like a stinger is the word for like a very short little music asset. So I think that is kind of cool about video games, in that it's maybe a little more, there's maybe a little more freedom, I would say. I don't know if y'all agree with that, but
100%.
anyone else want to jump in on this question? And thank y'all so much for these audience questions. They're awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think Connor, you and Yoko kind of covered most of what I was thinking. But I mean, I haven't personally scored a video game yet. I've only done in-game tracks, which is very different. But from what I've seen with like a more score format is you'll add like different elements for different moments in the game. Like say you're in a certain area and like you have a certain mood, and then all of a sudden like you encounter a combat scene with an enemy you have to fight. Then you'll have like other elements come in, like different layers, different assets. So you're like keeping the same kind of some of the motifs will stay and some of the layers will stay, and then you'll introduce new layers in, or maybe at that moment the music will completely switch. So yeah, that's from like what I've observed. And but like Yoko was saying, for the in-game cinematic, which is something I'm actually working on right now, is it's more song-based. So you don't have to make a loop, or it would just kind of exist on its own in the game. So
Cool. There's a follow-up question to that question, I think. Yeah, from the same person. So, do you think there are similarities with animation films or not? I would say, having worked in animation, not that much. I've only worked on a few games, but I didn't see much overlap, only because of the function of game music being triggered. So when I've worked on games, this actually I'll speak to Ali's question. Are there any specific software skills? Yes, in my experience, WISE, WWISE, this is a game music implementation software. I had to say that out because it's a lot of syllables like that. WISE is, there's a learning curve for that. However, if you can learn WISE, the program, you'll be invaluable as a video game composer, because you'll be able to implement your own music into the game, and that doesn't have to be a separate role. So it's kind of like, it's almost like flexing by being able to use WISE, I would say, if you want to learn it. Is it fun? I can't say I found it fun. Did I eventually learn it? Yes. I think WISE would be like almost really useful. And then I would say whatever DAW you use, definitely know how to make really clean loops, I would say. Those are my two things. So panelists, maybe if you want to do a combo question of the animation question or the software question, either or both.
yeah, I guess I would say, I would try to get production skills up, because the more quickly you know your tools, the faster you'll be able to basically implement your ideas. So just work on those production skills. Also, yeah, in video games, you need to be a good producer as well as a good composer. So however you can, get yourself into a good place with that, learn as many tools you can. That's definitely very powerful. I haven't personally had to use Wise yet, but it's something I'm planning to learn, and I think it's a really great skill to have as well.
It's definitely more, I should have said this when I was speaking, it's definitely more applicable in the indie world, because in AAA games, you won't have to touch that, I don't think. I've never worked in AAA. This is just what I hear from doing interviews like this. But for indie games, if you can do Wise, I believe you would be hired for sure 100% before someone who does not know how to use Wise, because you are able to implement your own audio. So if you don't know what that means, I know it's kind of wordy. It's essentially programming the assets you've created, so stingers, transitions, whatever, to be triggered within the game. So you make these things called containers and folders and things like that. And they're a way of bringing your audio into the game so that it's triggered at the right moments. So it's very programmy. It's almost like like coding. And it's also very type A, very structured. So if that's not your bag, it's okay. You don't have to do that. I just think it is a useful skill if you're trying to land something really competitive, which is indie games. Everyone wants to work in indie games because indie games are lit.
Yes, I agree. And I know the Wise also has a free certificate program, so you can, dive into it for free, which is very useful.
So I'm gonna chip in a little bit to answer yes. Implementation software like Wise or Fmod, they're extremely useful. Even the triple A's say, oh, here are the stack of my layers. Here are the stack of my dingers and everything, stingers and everything. You can say, hey, would you like me to deliver in a, say, like Fmod file? Or sometimes they would truly appreciate, because they're going to save their working time, by you delivering. It's optional, for sure. It's not a requirement. And even the triple A clients would appreciate if you're going to deliver in that kind of format, because that's going to not only save their time, but also they can see in a way, like imagine like they're going to see like how you would stack, in the Lego block. So in that sense, it's definitely a skill. It's not necessarily a requirement, but if you have the skill, it's definitely something developers would go like, ooh, you have that skill. So, and yes, to answer the question, I see the audience ask if I use Wise. I'm not really a master, or like a legend, like user of Wise or Fmod or anything, but I've learned both Fmod and Wise. In some countries in Asia, I work with a lot of Asian game developers. They use their own thing that's not really common here in the States yet, but I find it that a lot of them fundamental, like how to use them on quite similar. So once you learn, say, oh, I started learning the free version of Wise, then the next time you're going to learn something else, say like Fmod or something, you can definitely use that skills of what you previously learned. So it's like, DAW sequence, like, oh, I've learned Cubase before, now I'm trying to learn how to do the logic. You see a lot of like similar functions, how to do like export, how to start the like sequence. So it's kind of similar, I'd like to say. It's nothing like you have to learn everything from scratch again. And it's definitely a good skill, but it's nothing like, unless you want to primarily work as an implementation artist or something, it's nothing like you have to be like super master level or anything, but it's definitely an amazing skill. I definitely encourage everyone to learn at least like the basic, like how to export, how to make that, like folders and files and line up in that sequence. So yeah, if I'm gonna answer that question, that's something that never existed. I wouldn't use in a cinematic work for like film and TV music.
Kelly, do you have any thoughts on the software question?
I don't score the games. I've never done that. But as far as just creating songs, and getting them for the ads for games or even put into the game, what we've used over here, we just use Ableton. That's, really comprehensive, easy, what I mean, to use, user friendly. And it does the job for us as far as for what we do in regards to that. So yeah. Or Pro Tools, we've used that as well. Those softwares. So yeah.
Cool. That does make sense for songwriting, I think, because Cubase and Logic and even Digital Performer, which has become archaic but used to be more used, I would say. Logic and Cubase are now mostly used for film and TV because the time code is so accurate, whereas Ableton and Pro Tools is not good for MIDI so much. It's better for audio, and Ableton is amazing for songs and live performance. So I would say also it's great to know your DAWs. Even if you don't use these DAWs, it's great to know what they do when you're working with people, because the more information you know about technology and stuff like that, I think the better composer you are in general, because that's our tool now. Technology is now how all of us, everyone in this Zoom, is how we are creating our work. So I think technology is super important. Well, let's see. It's 10:45, so there's about 10 minutes left. I want to open up the space for more audience questions, and if not, I still have like a dozen questions I can ask too. So if anyone in the audience wants to jump in with a question, either unmute yourself and ask your question or drop it in the chat. And while we're doing that, I would love everyone, if they want to drop their favorite video game in the chat. I'll tell you what mine is, Roller Coaster Tycoon. I've been playing it for like 20 years. And then I'd love to hear what games y'all love, because we didn't touch on this yet, but there's like so many different types of games. And I think that it's like movies, different genres. But I do feel like your work in this industry, there's so many types of games, like platformers, puzzle games, shooter games, role play games. There's like mystery games, so many different types. I think that's kind of cool to think about. So, well, I don't see any audience questions, so I'll ask. Oh, does someone want to jump in?
Yes, I would like to start a quick question, please. I am a composer for film, and I've done animation too. And I want to know if how do you get into finding what the jobs are, the call outs? Is it different than in the film industry, whereas who in the film industry, but with the video games, is it more the same, or is there a platform where you can find, like Becca, you said you found something on Facebook?
Yeah, it was I think part of the perspective page or a post there. I would just say join more composing groups, because you never know where things will pop up. I've also met collaborators through Instagram and different social media. I have gone to GDC and GSC before, although I haven't gotten any jobs from them yet. Hopefully I would at some point. But I have met a few collaborators there. So you never know. Like that can work. That definitely can turn into jobs, as one of my jobs was from my peer, Yoko, and another one was just from a cold pitch. So I would say just there's no right time. Just kind of put yourself out there and share what you're doing on social media. I think that's a really smart way for people to find you. And because you could be the most amazing composer in the world, but if no one knows about you, then you're not going to find the jobs. So
what's GDC? I'm not familiar with that. GDC?
It's the Game Developers Conference. It's in March in San Francisco, and it's a big conference. Last year was my first year going, and I'll be going again this year too. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. A lot of developers and industry folks from all across video games go there, and that's just one of the events that you can partake in that could be good opportunities, and also a lot of fun.
Thanks.
So I'm gonna jump in at a question as well. Of course, there's always a chance for everyone to get a project or get into game music industry by auditioning, like how I needed like someone specific like Kelli and her husband Mansa. That was complete like audition basis, and I got really great talent. And now Kelli's an amazing person too, so that was like a huge plus too to work with. But I also find it very useful to go to game shows. Like, there are a lot of great game shows, one in Germany, one in Tokyo, one in even Taiwan. Taiwan is getting bigger. Canada even has amazing one. Even those game shows offer online. And if you can't physically visit those, say, oh, this is too far away in Europe, then you can always jump in that game show by signing up to their online, like business mixers or like online business. It's almost like in a way, it's like speed dating. You're gonna set up like cold contact with the developers or people who are in need of game music or the sound jobs, and you're gonna just talk with this person online, like something platform like Zoom. Hi, nice to meet you. I can offer this. How about what you need is this, this, this. So I've done that both in person and online. They're both amazing. I've done a lot of like cold contacts. Hey, I do this work. Do you happen to need this kind of services? Or this is like, my new company. Like I've done a lot of like trying to promote myself or trying to promote what I can offer. And quite unexpectedly, I found friends and collaborators, like amongst those like cold contacts. So, and then while you're trying to do that, sometimes, you gain friends, collaborator, and that kind of friends or collaborator would bring me to other, opportunities, or, like Becca introduced me to like many other amazing artists and, people who work in the same industry and that kind of thing. And, you can, even help each other if you know the right person. Oh, I feel like this person has great chemistry. I always try to put them in touch, and even if there's no immediate, like needs and necessity for a specific project, but sometimes I hear like a happy news, like, hey, I ended up working with that person you introduced me to, and that was like amazing. Like if we both like reciprocate this kind of thing. It's a very very small industry compared to say like film music world. where you see like many thousands of composers and orchestrators and arrangers literally all over the world. But game is relatively newer and still a growing industry. So I think you can use internet or like in person as much as possible, even if you've never been there. If you're interested, I would say just like, like jump into it, and that's gonna bring you to somewhere different, is something I would say.
Awesome. Thank you. It looks like we have a raised hand in the audience. Can we
Okay.
jump in?
Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to know, so I've been kind of exploring different career options, and I noticed like within the game world, there's a lot of kind of composer adjacent roles. And I was just wondering if any of you were familiar with like what the difference between a music designer and a composer is, because it's not sound designer, which would like, I guess, imply more focused on like working with sounds. So I don't know if anyone can speak to that. But if you can't, that's okay. I was just wondering, kind of how much composing is involved in a music designer role.
Music designer. So can you please explain a little bit, like, like where you encountered, like those music designer, like, and did you see any specific project calling for music designer or sound designer? Because usually I've only worked with
Okay.
sound designers.
Yeah, it was like it's a friend of a friend who works as a music designer. And I was just kind of like Googling to like see what his resume was like and stuff. He used to work on Call of Duty and some other stuff, and but he's a music designer, not a composer. So I didn't quite know what that meant. And so I thought this might be a cool opportunity to ask if you guys have any insight about what the difference is. I've just come across music designers recently. I know they have, I know one music designer who works at Riot Games, and from what I understand, the role is he still composes, but he also will implement a lot of things among the different, collaborators, the orchestrators, the instruments. They're also like a big ideas person, like coming up with concepts. It's almost like they're like part designer, game designer, and part composer. From what I understand, I'm not sure if it's a newer role that's recently cropped up, but it sounds very interesting and technical and cool. So, but yeah, I think it definitely would be worth looking into. Yeah, that person is also an incredibly talented composer as well. So they're just kind of, that's how their brain works, more like in a artistic sense, like graphic design and architecture of a game meets sound and music all put together.
Cool. Well, we are reaching the end of this wonderful insight session. Panelists, if you have any last thoughts, please feel free to jump in now. Otherwise, I'll send everyone off on their merry way. Does anyone have a last closing thesis or something? Oh yeah, if Kelli, Yoko, and Becca, if you want to drop your websites into this chat so people can check out your music, that would be awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you all so much for being here today, panelists and attendees. It means a lot. We do these every month, so please feel free to come on back. The topic is always different, and this will be on Zoom. I mean, not on Zoom. Oh my gosh, YouTube. This will be on YouTube, and you can share it with your friends or whatever. And that's pretty much it. Thank you so much, everyone. Hope you have a great Wednesday. Bye.
Thank
Thank you, everyone. This was a lot of fun. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.